Hello and welcome. Whether you're trying out fighting games for the very first time or simply need a refresher on one of the most important facets of playing them, we've got you covered here as we go over Footsies 101. So what exactly do we mean when we say footsies? The term applies to the kind of back and forth dance characters do while they're both standing and not currently physically engaged with one another. This is called being in the neutral, by the way. You're trying to hit your opponent while they try to hit you, and most commonly the best way to do that is to poke them with a relatively far-reaching attack. Now, especially in Street Fighter, said attack is usually a low-medium kick, and when you have two characters trying to poke each other with low-medium kicks from around max distance, hey, it looks like a game of footsies. So people called it that, and it stuck. Now, it may feel like there are infinite possibilities in terms of what you might do while in the neutral or while playing footsies, because there are, but we can simplify things down to a much more manageable and less daunting 3 basic components. The first of these is moving forward and hitting your opponent. Now you press a button, your character will react with the corresponding attack, and if you're close enough, you'll hit your foe. Not close enough? Well, you simply need to move within range. That's it. That's step 1. Get close enough and hit them. Now, of course, your opposition will be trying to do the same. So then what happens? You use the second component to counter them. Put up a wall to occupy the space your opponent is trying to move into. Your foe will be trying to get close enough to hit you with their favorite normal attack, but you can throw a wrench into their plan by strategically tossing out preemptive attacks of your own that will hit them as they try to maneuver into your personal space. There's a counter to this as well, and it's the third component, whiff punishing. If you see your foe trying to wall or zone you out with those preemptive attacks, you can take advantage of when they whiff or miss entirely. Every attack has a recovery period during which it no longer has an active hitbox that can hurt you. What's more, the attacker's outstretched limb is vulnerable during this recovery period and they cannot block until the recovery is over with. If an opponent misses in front of you, you can hit them during this recovery either with a quick reaction or a smart prediction. You may already see how this rapidly becomes a rock, paper, scissors type process, as each of these 3 components is either a foil to or is foiled by the others. Moving in close to attack is countered by putting up a wall. Said wall is countered by patient whiff punishing, and those who are being overly patient invite their opposition to close in on them. It's the constant transition and tension between these 3 components that makes up footsies. There's a good bit more to footsies beyond the basics, and we'll get into some of that here shortly. But first, we'd like to recommend a simple yet incredibly effective tool for learning and appreciating the power of footsies, a game literally called Footsies. This is a $4 title that can be purchased on Steam, and it essentially simplifies everything down to bare bones basics. Before tossing in the variables of jumping, projectiles, teleports, and the myriad of other zany actions that commonly pop up in fighting games, you can experience a match between 2 characters with the exact same abilities where you just try to hit your opponent with a low-medium kick while they try to do the same to you. The kinds of mind games that naturally develop here are ones that you can take with you into more complex fighting titles, and the foundations you'll lay down by starting with something like this will be exceedingly valuable down the road. So if you're thinking to yourself, yeah, sure, all of this is great for patient and thoughtful play, but all of my opponents jump at me the first chance they get, and you haven't mentioned jumping once. Well, you're right, and you're right. And the conversation about footsies cannot fully be had without eventually factoring in jumps. Now, most greener players will naturally gravitate to skipping over footsies by leaping at their foes and trying to land their hardest hitting combo, and no wonder. You get to disengage from the stress of simultaneously trying to evade and land that perfect hit, and at earlier levels of play, jumping doesn't seem to carry much risk. You have to make that risk apparent, and the way you do it is through anti-airs. Anti-airs refer to most any attack that can be consistently used to swat incoming opponents out of the air. Now, this can be achieved with normal attacks, but is most often done with anti-air specials like uppercuts. Developers tend to design anti-air specials to be invincible to airborne attacks, making them perfect counters for opponents who get a little too jump happy. Your footsie game is only as strong as your anti-air game makes it, meaning you absolutely must learn your character's anti-air options and become proficient at performing them on the fly. This, paired with a solid footsie foundation, forces foes to respect your ground and air defenses, meaning that they'll have to thoughtfully manipulate you into making a mistake if they want to score some real damage. If they simply keep throwing themselves at you, they'll crash and burn against your superior defense. Now, honing the ability to stop your opponents from approaching freely will immediately catapult you up the early leaderboards and score you a ton of wins. This more patient approach may not seem as alluring as just jumping right off the bat or finding a fast, forward-moving special attack that helps you skip through most of the neutral, but you'll find that there's a ceiling for this kind of shortcut-based play, and once you start encountering opponents who know how to shut this down, you'll have to relearn your entire approach if you want to continue to level up. Do yourself a favor and put in the work now. Understanding footsies is a great place to begin your fighting game journey as you lay down a sturdy foundation and then continue to build on it from there. As deep as the footsies rabbit hole goes, and as important a concept as it is to understand, it's still only one piece of the puzzle and surely isn't the answer for all situations at all times. The concepts we've discussed thus far apply generally, but most are most applicable to Street Fighter entries and games that have a similar flow to them. Even then, the footsies of any given match is going to change based on the character you're using and the character your opponent is using. One can appreciate, for example, how quickly things change when Dhalsim enters the mix. You still use the basic concepts, but the distances you'll be playing from and the buttons you'll be using will likely be different than if you're in a Ryu mirror match. As different as Street Fighter matchups against Dhalsim might feel relative to most of the rest of the rosters, other kinds of fighting games quickly change the footsie scope even more drastically. For example, the high-flying and assist-heavy Dragon Ball FighterZ team game is played with much quicker movement and much larger attacks that can take up huge portions of the screen. The basic rules still apply at some level though, as there is still a neutral dance players must engage in. It's just the danger zones where you don't want to be might be enormous compared to those in Street Fighter. The principles of trying to goad your opponent into whiffing or sniffing out overly defensive tactics and going in hard at just the right moment still apply, they just do so from much farther away and with different maneuvers. We hope this introduction to the concept of fighting game footsies has been informative and not too daunting. Remember, this is a process that is never fully mastered, and thus it's something that you'll continue to refine and perfect through your entire fighting game career. You can find a ton more on the art of footsies as well as every other facet of fighting games on Event Hubs. From strategies, character moves, and even publicly voted on tier lists, if you're interested in learning, leveling up, or just hearing the news, Event Hubs is your one-stop shop for fighting game coverage. If you've enjoyed this, then we'd greatly appreciate a like, subscribe, and a comment to help us get the message out to as many players as possible. I've been John Velociraptor Guerrero for EventHubs.com. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.